it feels like there has been, dare I say, alerts to the left within the Democratic Party when it comes to taxes and the conversation, whether it's about the new Green Deal or some of the other programs around buybacks that have been announced over the past couple of weeks. Are you in favor of what you're seeing happening right now?
I am, because this lurch to the left, and I am for some movement to the left in some substantive areas, but it's been greatly exaggerated. Nancy Pelosi was very neutral on the Green New Deal. Only a minority of Democrats have been supportive of it, even if it's vague outline. So the extent to which, in fact, a lot of the Democrats who won Republican seats, in fact, most of the Democrats who took seats from the Republicans are not in that most left-wing sector, although they are clearly to the left of the Republicans on a whole range of issues. I do think there is room, not only room, but a good argument for increasing the top rate. It's gone up. You know, I voted to raise the top rate under Bill Clinton. We had subsequently a great economy. There's one other point, though, I'd like to make, if I could. And Andrew, I thought you had a very good point when you asked State Senator Janoris, well, what's the alternative? That, as you guys know, my mantra is the Henny Youngman compared to what? When asked, how's your wife? And my problem is this. One of the things we are not going to get now is any significant increase in spending for infrastructure, which is one of Trump's promises that he is not coming close to keeping. And the major reason for that is that the revenue that would have been used for infrastructure went to the size of the tax cut. And the problem is, I'll just close with this, when you were talking about increasing productivity in America, I think a well-done infrastructure program is the single best use of federal revenue. And so in that sense, in particular, I was very critical of the overall size of the tax cut.
Right. Let's go to the Heritage Foundation in Washington. What I'm very curious about is just the polling. One of the things that's so fascinating about this is there does seem to be a sense of bipartisan support for more progressive taxation in America, especially on the wealthy, in a way that it didn't seem to be the case even 12 months ago. Adam.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with how these policies are being sold. It sounds nice to just tax the rich and they'll fund all the things that we want, whether it be infrastructure or Medicare for all or the Green New Deal. But the reality is there's just not enough money at the top to tax away to fund all of these priorities. A wealth tax, as Elizabeth Warren has proposed, raises a couple $1 trillion. That's well shy of the $30-40 trillion you need for the sort of other progressive priorities. So these aren't really proposals to tax just the wealthy. They ultimately have to be proposals to tax the middle class Americans. If you look at Europe, this is what they do. The top marginal rates of 50-60% fall all the way down to people earning $50,000-$60,000 a year.
Adam, do you agree, though, that there is a sense of mistrust or distrust about the tax system broadly in the United States today, and that's what's underlying so much of this angst?
There is a great misunderstanding about how taxes work. You see that in the news today or yesterday when all these stories about people's refunds not being as big as they expected to be. And it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how taxes work. Your refund has nothing to do with how big your tax cut was. Most Americans got a significant tax cut because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And you got that over the course of the whole year. So how your withholding changed has nothing to do with how much more money you had in your pocket over the whole year. So
Amen.
it comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of who pays the taxes and how they're ultimately paid, and that's a problem.
Hey, Congressman Frank, the infrastructure point that you made, I mean, the amount of revenue the government brought in was still up 1% from where it was. So we didn't lose the revenue. The spending has gone up, but for us to have spent that money, the corporate tax money on, or the Tax Reform Act money on infrastructure, we would have had to not spend it. So maybe that's the point you made. We should not spend it on defense, or we should not, because the spending is still there.
Certainly, look, on defense, I'm puzzled by Donald Trump. I agree with him. I have for a long time that our allies are getting a free ride on us.
Yeah.
But the paradox is The only way to get them to spend more is for us to say, look, as of 2 years from now, we're spending less. And so he does the other. He says to them, you should spend more, but he spends anyway as if they don't, so they don't feel they have to. But as far as the revenue is concerned, let me just say, I just heard a very paradoxical argument. First of all, there was a strong attack on the European tax system. Whatever you think about the tax system in Europe, Germany seems to be doing pretty well, some others not. It's got nothing to do with what the Democrats are proposing. Secondly, yes, it is true. If you funded every ideal that every liberal has, it would cost us more than we could expend. Same with the conservatives. The fact is that if you were to get a couple of $1 trillion, whether it's from a wealth tax or more likely, I think, from the administrative standpoint, from significant increases in the rate at the top level, and maybe you don't get a couple of trillion, it funds some of this. The notion that either you fund everything, Medicare for all, and all of the other issues, and you then have to raise all that. No, you don't. But if you can raise significant amounts of money by raising taxes on the very rich, and I, by the way, there is no evidence that raising that top marginal rate to a reasonable level is going to diminish economic activity.
Barney, we got to run. What's a reasonable level?
Oh, I think getting into the high 40s.
High 40s.